Let's take a look at the top of the CBS Sports Coach Rankings. We've got the top 10 there on the screen as you're looking at it. Remember, this is the consensus from lots of ballots from across CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports. Kirby Smart at 1, Ryan Day at 2, Dabo Swinney at 3, Brian Kelly at 4, Steve Sarkisian at 5, Kyle Whittingham at 6, Kalen DeBoer at 7, Mike Norvell at 8, Dan Lanning at 9, Lincoln Riley at 10. Tom, we missed you on Monday. Much love to Lynn. If we get that back up for a second, why don't you find a spot where, because you had to write the story within the top 10. Which one, either higher or lower? Like, what's a coach that stood out to you as an interesting placement once all the ballots were tabulated?
That's the thing. I knew going into this year because losing Saban, losing Harbaugh, Jimbo getting fired, like you lose all these guys who have won national titles, and it creates quite the vacuum at the top to where somebody's going to slip in. And I knew there was going to be a lot of recency bias in this one, which, I mean, I had Sarkisian at 5 or 6 on my ballot. So even though he's had one great season and being at 5 already, even that surprised me, even though I had him up there. But to me, the biggest surprise was Day at 2, even though I get it. Because I look at the other coaches on that list, and it's like Ryan Day hasn't won a conference title in 3 years. He got to the playoff. He nearly won a game there. He nearly beat Georgia. And, you could argue some people, Ohio State fans will tell you if Marvin Harrison doesn't get hurt, they definitely win that game. But just to me, it's like I look at the other names in that list. I know why Sark jumped up. He won the Big 12. He got to the playoff. I know why Kalen DeBoer jumped up. It's weird to me that Ryan Day jumps up to number 2 because I think he was at 5 or 6 last year. So for him to climb up to number 2 in a year in which he lost to Michigan again and did not get to the playoff was kind of strange to me, but I also get it because he's the head coach at Ohio State, and it's a team that every single year is going to be competing for something. They're going to win 10 games. So when you look at it from that angle, it's easy to say he's the second best or the third best coach in the country. And also with just the way the voting works, like some people would have Lincoln Riley in the top 5. Some don't have him in their top 10. So you take those averages out and they drop. Whereas Ryan Day is probably between 2 and hell, he might not even have been 2 on anybody's ballot. He might have been between 4 and 6 on everybody's ballot and just compiling the scores. That's the second lowest score. So yeah, it was weird. It was a crazy year because as I was doing these rankings every year, I have to do how many spots they fell, how many spots they rose. And typically in a given year, you'll see a guy the guy who climbs the most climbs 10 spots or 12 spots. The guy who drops the most climbs maybe 15. This year you had guys climbing 35 spots, dropping 20 some odd spots. It was freaking nuts. Sark jumped 32 spots to number 5. He was number 37 last year. Now he's the 5th best coach in the country. So it was very weird. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next year.
Some of those jumps were because a lot of us don't rank the guys who killed it at FCS until they showed it at the FBS level.
Mm-hmm.
I remember last year talking about DeBoer. It's okay, guys, there's some evidence here that he really killed it at FCS. He killed it as a coordinator, decent first year, but there's a real chance to make a big, big time jump there. So yeah, it's on the Monday show we said 2 through what is defensible as far as how you want to stack it.
8.
How many guys could you put 2? 10?
I mean, without me thinking you're a moron, probably, yeah. I probably wouldn't agree with a lot of them, but I'd be like, all right, at least I get it.
Yeah, it's not a fake, just hot take for social clicks type argument. Yeah.
Pat Narduzzi, number 2.
Well, all right, so sorry, you almost derailed me there. You can look at Ryan Day as a jump up. He also mostly stayed in line. You lose Saban, you lose Harbaugh, who are both ahead of Ryan Day. He slid up in the pecking order. He really just jumped Dabo. And I could be wrong. I love your comment there, Tom, because I want to say that the Day and Dabo average rankings for both of them are lower than 3. Or it's something like 3.1 something for Day, who's at number 2, and 4 point something for Dabo, who is at 3. So you're right that the 2 through however many is really hard to call because there is no consensus. Was Kirby Smart unanimous? I don't have the information that he was unanimous. It does absolutely seem like he was a close to unanimous selection for number 1, given what we know about some of the voting averages for number 2 and number 3, where, yeah, Tom, we talked about Dabo a lot on I've got him as my 2, and obviously, yeah, and obviously he's being penalized. He's being penalized because Clemson hasn't been in the college football playoff since 2020. He's being penalized because if you value
being
recruiting,
penalized by the expectations he set.
yeah, and also all right. I had this starred for. Did y'all catch this one?
Yes, it was amazing.
Dabo Swinney at the ACC spring meetings on the ACC network. I'm not going to do a full Dabo impression, but I'm going to try to hear it in my head. Well, every player's technically a transfer. I mean, we just signed a whole class of guys transferring from high school.
I think Taylor Tannenbaum does a tremendous job on the ACC network, and
I agree.
I'm kind of surprised that they have been able to keep her. I'm like, how has she not been poached by like the Big Ten network or the SEC? But like, they're lucky to have her. I kind of wish that she wouldn't have jumped in and let him talk more, because I really think he might have gone on like an absolute heater of a quote. And like, even though he kind of got jumped on it, he still gave us this, which was just absolutely golden. So
yeah,
I mean,
I think there are voters who are penalizing Dabo for this position, right?
Yes, I'm one of them.
Yeah. And as he said, you still have Dabo in the top 10. So, where do you go? The 2 through 10, very interesting. All right.
If Vegas is right and Clemson goes 9-3, are any of you guys keeping him in the top 10 after this year?
He's got 2 national titles.
No transfer stuff.
He's got 2 national titles.
That's fair. I mean, look, it's.
I don't know if I'll have him at number 2 anymore, but he's
not resume. Is it like who you'd hire right now? Like it's
everything.
A lot of it's just everything. Everything. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. 2 national titles, 6 straight college football playoffs, a decade of 10-win seasons. Mm-hmm. Like if we're gonna, talk about what's on paper for some of these guys, you're not gonna find coaches at 11, 12, 13, 14 that are going to be able to compare to that. So he'll definitely still be up there. 9-3 also with Georgia on the schedule is really more like a 9.5 and 2.5.
All right. Who would you want coaching your team? Dabo or Dan Lanning? Dabo or Jeff Brom? Like guys
Dan
who are
Lanning.
Using all of the resources, or guys who are purposely kneecapping themselves over some culture nonsense?
I would take Dan Lanning over Dabo, and I would take Dabo over Jeff Brom, because Dabo's worst season was 8-4. Jeff Brom's typical season is 8-4. It's not like he's out there recruiting national title caliber teams.
Well, we also, like, if we're going to celebrate Lance Leipold and, be able to apply all this, what you won at what level and what you did based on expectations, James Franklin still getting credit for Vanderbilt, then you kind of got to do that for Jeff Brom at Purdue, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had him 14th.
I had Brom at 23rd.
All right, so 11 was James Franklin, Lance Leipold at 12, Chris Kleiman at 13. Oh, yeah, Seren Petra is going to be asking us about the 12 and 13. We got the Kansas boys right next to each other. Lane Kiffin checking in at 14, Mike Gundy at 15, Dave Doran at 16, Luke Fickell at 17, Kirk Ferentz at 18, Jeff Brom down at 19, lower than I had him. Mark Stoops at 20, 10 through 20. Bud, anything stand out as a big surprise to you?
I mean, we already did the Lincoln Riley thing. Do you think USC would hire him again today after what they've seen through 2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
How low did you have him?
I had him 30th.
30th.
I think he botched his window. I think a lot of the things Oklahoma fans were saying about him on the way out look more true today than they did at the time. I mean, you had a real window.
And you think that makes him the 30th best coach, and that he's only going to he's going to do is win 10 or 11 games?
Well, Vegas has got him at 7 this year. So let's see how this roster building works. Like they were 17th in recruiting for USC. That's bad to me. Like I expect, we know what USC when it's rolling looks like.
But that's an
I
old
get
time.
that, but the man,
Man.
he's been to 4 playoffs. He's won 4 conference. Like we're talking about how it was a disaster because they went 7-5 last year, and it was. I mean, I've been very critical of what he does, but 30th.
I mean,
the coaching at USC.
He was an incompetent coach last year.
No,
they looked soft. They looked disorganized. I think he showed an inability to recognize good.
Who was
coaching.
29th on your ballot?
Who do I have? Marcus Freeman, who kicked his ass.
Who was 28?
Who do I have? Sonny Dykes, who just went to a national title.
And then did what?
Lost.
Went what, like 6-6, which was worse than Lincoln did last year. So because Sonny Dykes got to the playoff one time, he's a better coach than the guy that's been there.
6-6 at TCU or 7-5 at USC.
But I'm saying he's been there once. Lincoln's been there 4 times.
Sonny Dykes did a better coaching job last year than Lincoln did. Going 7-5 with Caleb Williams or 6-6 at TCU.
Okay, man. I think 30th is way too.
I'm out on it. Okay, I'm out on it. Like you held on to that DC who everybody said this guy sucks. You took him with you to USC. We gave you the benefit of the doubt for 1 year, keeping him for the next year. You blew the Caleb Williams opportunity to win. I
don't know, man. This feels like a Marcelo leaving Notre Dame out of his top 30 situation to me.
All right, let's
say it.
Next year, will the ranking be closer to what CBS has it, or will you guys be closer to what I have it at 30 if they go 7-5 like Vegas thinks? Because I bet you y'all are going to come to me. I'm not coming to you on this if Vegas is right.
I don't think I'm going to be down to 30.
Okay.
Unless he goes like 0-12. I don't think he's dropping to 30. He's kind of got a resume.
17th in recruiting, not really killing it in the portal. Like that's if you were 17th in recruiting and you crushed the portal, I'd be like, all right, cool. It's a different way of roster construction, but they didn't. Like they were one of the teams like LSU that needed to get a good D tackle, and they got their ass beat on the portal this year. Like they lost Isaiah Rakes. They haven't brought anybody good in to play interior defensive line.
But are you ranking based on their activity in the portal this offseason or their ability as an entire coach in their entire career?
No, I'm just ranking on who I would hire today.
Okay.
And my opinion of Lincoln Riley now is a lot lower than it was 3 and 4 years ago.
Okay.
So to your first point, when you said we know what USC looks like when it's rolling, I think that's 2 college footballs ago. I think the coaching at USC post Pete Carroll has been subpar, and I think that Lincoln Riley is an upgrade to what USC has had in terms of its coaching. And you could argue that USC institutionally is not that different from Miami in terms of how far the perception of what it could be is versus the standard that seems to be set by the administration, because they let that USC football program be just fine for a decade before they started really wanting to apply some pressure and really wanting to make some changes that come with going to get Lincoln Riley.
I do think that the one defense that I'm surprised USC fans have not thrown at me on Twitter is that it's not Lincoln's fault that he misevaluated USC's NIL situation.
That USC misevaluated or Lincoln?
No, that would Riley have gone to USC had he known the true situation with their NIL? It has not been elite. So how much are we documenting Riley? You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
He would have gone to LSU. So you're saying he would have gone to LSU when he told us he's definitely not going to LSU in that press conference because LSU would have had a better NIL situation.
Right. Also, I think a lot of this comes down to, are you doing it based on who you'd hire today, or are you doing it based on resume so far? If it's resume so far, 30th is preposterous, right? This is my opinion of who I would hire today. Clearly, I think more of the folks in our voting
still just have a hard time thinking there are 29 coaches I would rather hire than the guy who's produced 5 Heismans or 4 Heismans and won multiple conference titles because he had one bad season. I still think that's preposterous.
Well, kind of 2 out of the last 3 seasons have been pretty bad.
Are you the
right?
last?
The last one in Oklahoma was pretty poor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's
a Caleb hamstring. He's a Caleb Williams hamstring away from winning a Pac-12 title.
That's what Danny said. He said if he's got one more college football playoff appearance, then you're looking at it a little.
It seems really, really low.
I think this is what makes it fun to argue about too.
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, and this is why I'm glad that the process involves a lot of different people bringing their own way of ranking these coaches, and then we bring it together for a consensus, and we find some surprises. 20, Mark Stoops. 21, Eli Drinkwitz. 22, Sonny Dykes. 23, Josh Heupel. 24, Marcus Freeman. 25, Matt Campbell. shout out to producer Jordan. If you're watching, Jordan, I owe you a call. He is surprisingly up in arms about Josh Heupel at 23.
What?
Yeah. I mean, just the snub of the century that the Tennessee Volunteers head football coach could not crack the top 10.
He jumped to number 16 last year after the 11-win season, and then he fell back after coming back down to earth. It seems perfectly reasonable to me. So deal with it, Jordan.
This is one where I'm actually like not the outlier. I'm exactly 23rd.
Yeah,
So
I had Heupel at where you at, Josh? 52nd. No, I had him at 28.
I like what Jacob in the tailgate says. Stoops, Drinkwitz, and Heupel all being right beside each other does seem right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're all top 30 coaches. They're all good coaches, but they've got a Georgia problem, and that is preventing them from being able to like join the ranks of those top 12, top 10 type coaches.
And you know what? Better coaches than Josh Heupel have been seduced by Joe Milton and the potential of him. Like Harbaugh thought he could fix him and couldn't, So it's hard to blame a guy totally for that, I guess.
Nico will save Josh. It's fine. The one thing that the top 25, and I mentioned this in last year's rankings because he didn't move a single spot this year. He's in the same spot he was last year. And it's just, I get it, but I don't get it. Why is Lane Kiffin in the top 15?
Like, so
they won the games they were supposed to win.
He's a top 25 coach. I'm not arguing that.
Right.
But like he won the 2 conference titles at FAU, but he also had a 5-7 season sandwiched in between them. He's never won a division title or a conference title at any Power 5 stop that he's had. Like, I know Ole Miss just had an 11-win season, but again, he didn't jump in the rankings. We had him at 14 last year before last season happened. So just for me, Ole Miss should be a playoff team this year. Would you guys agree with everything they've done? They're all in. Like the goal is the playoff.
Yeah.
If they do not make the playoff this year and our voters still have Lane in the top 20, I am going to start calling them all out by name on this show every single day and force them to apologize publicly just for ranking their buddy high.
I had him 11.
Really?
Yeah, I think that he is. First of all, I think he's kind of maximizing what Ole Miss can be under the current landscape of the sport. They seem to have some okay stability there relative to how many transfers he brings in. I think he is a really, really good offensive coach. And I think it's important to recognize that hiring people is a major job of the head coach. And I think he has recognized that he is not a very good recruiter and that he has to bring in more people on that side of the ball. They went out and hired like a big time GM. I thought they made a really couple savvy like hires in terms of on the recruiting side, sort of behind the scenes. And he was also very progressive in terms of, hey, stop donating to facilities. We don't need this kind of stuff, right? Like put this money towards NIL. We need to have players. And I think he's kind of reaped the benefits of that. So I mean, he has adapted to the current landscape almost exactly the opposite way that Dabo has. So I give him credit for it.
But you're not supposed to beat. And then that's see that to me, that's part of it. Like when you're winning games you're not supposed to, that's the side of a good coach to me.
Well, I agree.
He beat LSU.
He
beat Auburn. Traditionally, Ole Miss does not do that.
Yeah, but last year were they favored in the? It's yeah.
All right. So for transparency, I had Lane Kiffin at number 18 on my ballot.
I had him at 20.
But my argument for Lane Kiffin has a lot to do with that idea that they've had 29 wins over the last 3 seasons with 2 New Year's Six bowl appearances, and in the history of Ole Miss football. You don't get. I mean, Hugh Freeze got a little.
You've got to go all the way back to Hugh Freeze.
But before that, I mean, I'm saying like
7 years ago.
But before that, what do you have? It's just
won national titles in the 60s. It's just. I mean, but I get that, Chip. But again, Hugh Freeze did it. Like it's not like he inherited an Ole Miss team that was like going 2-10. It wasn't like the Ed Orgeron days when he took over the program. Things were already heading in the right direction at Ole Miss when he got there.
Wasn't that like the interim with Matt Luke?
Yeah. He took over
after Hughes, dalliances with the school phone.
Yeah, I didn't move him into the top 10. I was very much a doubter of them last year. I thought that they when they had to play the really, really good teams, they got smoked, like when they ran up against Georgia. But I think he's kind of stabilized them and is basically has Ole Miss bumping up against what I think its ceiling is every year.
Like I said, I've got him at 20, so it's not like I think he's a bad coach. But when he's like ranked ahead of Mike Gundy, who's done a whole lot more in his career, he's ranked ahead of Dave Doran, who has had very similar seasons at NC State to what Lane's had at Ole Miss, but he's doing it at NC State, and he did it in a division with Clemson and Florida State for however long he did it. When he's ahead of Luke Fickell, who took Cincinnati to the damn college football playoff, it's like, really? Okay, sure, because he went, he won the Conference USA. Great.
I think that is throwing out Mike Gundy, throwing out Dave Doran, like those are fair. Like that, it is definitely that is the pod, right? You sometimes you just got to group these guys, and that's a fair group for Lane Kiffin. Where I'm not, I think I had Dave Doran higher. Let's see,
I had Dave Doran at 8.
Love that.
I feel like it's a little high, but I don't really hate that. I think
if you're a program that's like not seen as a national title contender, there are very few coaches that I would rather have than Dave Doran.
Totally.
Because he might not win the national title, but he can build a program that's capable of beating a national title contender once a year.
Yeah. I had Doran at 13. I had Fickell at 15. Kiffin down at 18. I mean, this is from my ballot, that is definitely a similar grouping of coaches.